Hi, everyone. Welcome to Thriving Adoptees. This is the voice of Jude Hung, and I am honored to be interviewing Simon Benn of Thriving Adoptees. I have been co-hosting a special series called Finding Home, and it is all about adoptees' stories and experiences around home, the concept of home, and finding home in itself. And I'm really honored to be interviewing the interviewer. Welcome, Simon, onto your own show.
Welcome to my own show.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
welcome.
We try to have more fun, right? The world of trauma is just so dark and ah,
Oh,
no,
it's so heavy.
the light heavy, yeah, heavy.
Yeah, and it feels good to be moving into the light.
Yeah.
So, um, as with everyone else, I'm going to start with the just that first springboard question. What does home mean to you?
Okay. So I thought I'll go ultra literal and then we'll go ultra metaphorical.
Love
So
it.
I was thinking about my mum and dad bringing me home in
Mm,
February 1967. Uh, and the fact that since then I've only lived in, I think, five. I've lived in five houses. Yeah, I've only lived in five homes. I've only lived in five homes since then, and they're all within about 20 minutes drive.
okay.
Um, and then I was also thinking, apart from college and a bit of traveling, um, and then I was also thinking about my birth mother collecting me on kind of, I want to say maybe the 2nd of February, 1967. Her collecting me from a short-term foster home. So she's handed me to somebody at some point, and then I went into this short-term foster woman in Blackpool, and then she had to come and get me and take me to the adoption council in Liverpool, where my mum and dad collected me from. And apparently her mum was with her, right? And what that must have been like, uh, having to do it twice, right?
Yeah, wow.
That must have been really, really tough for her
Yeah,
to do it twice.
that's intense.
Um, that's intense.
Yeah.
And no, I've interviewed a few birth mothers on the show. One of whom has the same initials. So my birth mother was Patricia Joan Flower, and I interviewed a lady called Patricia Jane Florin as a birth mother, and like the same initials, same first name, Florin. It's a bit like flower, and I don't know how many birth mothers, but their trauma is so much more conscious for them.
Yes, because they were adults or young adults. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, uh, and there, I often think about, because I know that 80% of the listeners to the show are women,
Yeah.
right? Which is kind of a stunning fact. I only discovered that a couple of months ago. I think about the maternal instinct and how, like, you're a mum of four, right?
Yeah.
I don't have a. I know maternal instincts can be stronger or weaker, but
Mhm.
what can be stronger than what can, sorry, I can't think of a better word to say it. What can trump,
Yeah.
right? What can trump the maternal instinct? We don't like the word trump, but there's no.
I Yeah, no. I think the we don't. I think the only thing that may prompt the maternal instinct is the infant's instinct to survive, because the infant doesn't have the consciousness or the context awareness that the mother has, but so survival at that point, when we're so fragile, I think that, but really they kind of mirror each other. That instinct and biology is very strong for both. And uh, I think the conscious part of it, having the awareness of that, the pain and what it's connected to, would be really rough
Yeah.
to go through. I really do.
And as a kind of an aside, slight 90-degree point, I went to see my somatic experiencing woman
Mhm.
Wednesday, called Blanche, and she's not adoption. She's not adoption competent. She has no knowledge of adoption, but she is the only somatic woman that I could find within reasonable drive. So it takes me an hour and a half to get there, and then an hour and a half back. But I was talking to her and trying to think of a way to sum it up, the trauma. And something came to me, because as adoptees, we're so keen for people to understand our trauma, right? And
Mhm. Mhm.
how can they? How can they? And
They can.
are we being unfair expecting them to
Yeah.
understand our trauma? And are we getting unnecessarily wound up about the fact that they don't understand it? So I thought, well, what about in the moment? An idea popped into my head, which was, why don't I try and get her to put, instead of her getting her asking her to put her feet in my shoes, why don't I create a scenario that is relevant to her? So
Mhm.
I said that the scenario that I came up with in the moment, I said, well, imagine if, because I know that she's got a partner, imagine if your partner left at breakfast time, and that night you had to sleep with a new partner that you'd never met before.
Mhm.
And she's like, oh yeah, I
Right.
I kind of get it. And
There
like,
you go.
there we go. And I was this came up. I came up with it, shared that with we did a panel for advocates on Wednesday as well, and a strange parallel came up in terms of, I mean, you just moved into a new house, or relatively new. What you call realtors, what we call estate agents, when they're checking whether they're
Mm-hmm.
checking the buyer's intentions, they'll say, "Can you imagine yourself living in this house?"
Oh,
That's
okay.
what they do in the UK. They'll often use that line. Can you imagine yourself living in this house? They are showing the potential buyer, and they're
Yeah.
trying to see if the buyer sees it, right? They
Hmm.
don't say, "Do you think you'll buy this house?" Or do you think,
Right. Yeah.
they try to get inside the buyer's head.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to sow a seed in Blanche's head about what it would feel like for her, so that
Hmm.
she gets this as an experience, not as a concept, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she gets it she has a lived experience of it. Oh, how would that feel? You've got to sleep with somebody.
Right. Yeah. She can feel it physically in her body, somatically, and she understands that because that's what the pool that she swims in. It's interesting. I have the same experience, but one time my mom had to hand me over to my uncle. She couldn't hand me over to my parents. They weren't supposed to see each other, but to my uncle. So, a stranger at the hospital. Yeah,
Wow.
I imagine it was really difficult. So, you said you're going to start with what home means to you, like literally, uh, and that being brought home. Do you have any more thoughts around that you want to share with us?
Just the fact I haven't strayed far from home. I haven't strayed far.
No, you haven't. You haven't strayed far. And um, what did home feel like for you as a child?
It felt like home. I didn't know any
Yeah.
different. Though we were burgled. Do you say burglarized? Do you or something? Americans say.
Robbed. Yeah. So
Robbed.
you were
Okay, we were
burgled?
burgled. Our house was burgled. Right, while we were away on
Uh-huh.
holiday, we were away for a weekend, or I don't know what it was, but we were burgled, and they took televisions and I don't know, clothes, and I don't know, television probably. We probably had one in those days. But I remember that being a bit scary. After being a bit scared at home after that.
How old were you? About.
When we got burgled, 7, 9.
So, like, do you think before that, did you feel like more safe at home? Like home felt like a safe place? Mhm.
Yeah. I think overall, so home was a safe place. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that wasn't It was it for a while. It was a little. There was a bit of fear, maybe going upstairs on my own or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what does home mean to you now? Now you're an adult, you have your own home, but what is the
Well, we've been in it
concept?
20. We've been in it 27 years. So it and we had it converted. So it's an old coach house. So it's the coach house to a manor house. So the manor house is next door. Has is huge. It has 5 bedrooms on the first floor, and 3 on the second, 3 in the attic for the servants, right? That they would have when
Mhm.
the house was built in 1890. And we live in the little coach house next to it, which was where the horses that pulled the guy's coach lived, and then became the garage. They had their own. It had its own petrol tank. So there's a mounting block for where,
Right, yeah.
like where the horse guy would bring the horse round for the guy that lived in the big house to get onto. But there was also back in the day, but there was also a petrol tank, and a petrol pump for when they
Yeah.
translate them. So we spent a lot of time and a lot of time and a lot of money turning it from what had been a stable block, basically,
Hmm.
just a stable block into a home. It's a great place. Yeah.
So, okay, so take that experience of reconstructing a home and how can you or does it not connect to how you have had to reconstruct within yourself um and create home within yourself for because of the adoption and relinquishment, mother separation trauma is really what I like to call it.
I don't think I'd say it's a reconstruction.
Mhm.
Um, I would say it's a deconstruction.
But then you have to build, right?
Yeah, if it was a house, but I'm not a house. So I would say it's been a deconstruction. It's been a removal.
Mhm.
It's been a removal of the stuff that isn't me to reveal me.
Mhm.
And that's what the diamond is about. But it's not just
Yeah,
about me. It's about everybody. Everybody is
yeah,
diamond. The Thriving Adoptees logo is a diamond. It
yeah.
wasn't always a diamond. I had a different logo before, but I started doing that the shtick with the fist. See,
Mhm. Yeah.
see,
Yeah. and Simon and I are on the same page with that metaphor with the diamond, with our, I call it our essence, with our soul, whatever that which is, as Simon likes to say, unwoundable. Uh, and yeah, I
Shall I do
still
it?
think,
Shall I do it in case people, because we're going to probably use this video on
yeah, do
as well as
it.
the
Show
podcast.
us what it
Okay,
is.
so let me. So for those listening, I'm holding my clenched fist up to the camera.
Yeah.
The clenched fist is my metaphor for trauma, and one of which the feelings of trauma as it manifested for me when I came out of the fog was anger. So anger, clenched fist, gonna do some damage, right? Not great on the inside, not great on the outside. So, but that clenched fist, it's not the natural position for the hand. So as I unfurl my fingers to make my hand flat, which is the natural way it would be, it reveals a diamond underneath that. So the diamond is the metaphor for us. We are worth loads,
Right. Yeah.
worth loads, and our worth, our self-esteem, our self-worth, our essence, all those things are hidden by the trauma that's in
Yeah.
the fist. So
Yeah.
home is the diamond. The diamond is home.
We are the diamond. So I would say home is the body we live in and our experience here on earth, right? Like, and it can also be a state of being, peace, bliss, euphoria, or it can be more in those lower states. And so for me, connecting to the states of being of the diamond is creating home for myself.
I'd agree with
Does that
that.
make sense? Yeah, yeah. And I feel like you are doing that work. Like you are creating a life that you enjoy. Hey, you're going to Greece next week.
Yeah. So I don't think we create who we are. We reveal who we are.
Mhm. Agree. We are who we are, right? Like, and we
Yeah.
reveal who we are.
And
And
from
we
that
connect.
place, we're more
Yeah,
likely to create a life that is more in line with that.
with
And
who
there
we
are
are.
going to be
Exactly.
moments. It's not Greece every week, right?
No, no, I was just kidding. But yes, but we can, because I come from a place where we can enjoy every moment. And there are some moments maybe we don't enjoy as much, but uh, I think it is about alignment and resonance with who we are and coming into that and consciously building that for ourselves, those connections.
The,
So you
the word
said
self,
that.
the
Hmm?
word the word self, it's like knowing ourself,
Mhm.
but our self as the diamond, not as
Yes,
not
exactly.
as the ego or the separate self or the trauma or the thoughts or the
Exactly.
feelings or the histories or the stories. No,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when I'm saying self, I'm thinking the capital
uppercase
S
self, yeah,
self.
capital,
Yeah, right. Not the trauma-bound narrative self.
not
Not
the
that.
trauma band.
No. So you said that you used to have a different logo and you switched to the diamond. Can you share that story?
Um, yeah, I was doing the diamond thing a lot, and I thought this arrow that I've got doesn't doesn't say enough.
Yeah.
It was like, what can I do? Thriving adoptees, okay, onwards and upwards. That was the kind of the idea. And as much as that, okay, bang it out, that's it, done. Move on with the thing. But then, I was doing the diamond all the time, and I thought, well, what is the essential issue that we face as adoptees? And it's that we don't think that we're worth enough.
Mhm.
What's the flip of that? The diamond. Okay,
Yeah,
why don't I do that why don't I use that as the logo? Because it means it's got a backstory. It's got a
right.
backstory,
Yeah,
and it's got an intrigue. It's got a bit of intrigue too. And if I talk about it, I hope people might start to see that for themselves.
right. Make the connection within themselves. Um, so you share a moment, at least you have with me, and I think others, about a teddy bear. And I think that that was a really significant moment of shifting for you. And I'm curious, was that before? Can you share it again? Was that before or after you were doing the podcast? I'm not sure where it is in your timeline.
Okay, so I'm 56.
Mhm.
Am I 56? No, I'm 67. No, I'm 57, aren't I?
67.
57. It's 20. It's 24, isn't it? 24. 14 minus 7 is 7. Isn't it? Okay, 67. I was born. Yeah, I'm 57. So when I was 40, I found out that the teddy bear that I'd had from birth was from birth, or for as long as I can remember, was from my birth mother, and I didn't know that it was from my birth mother. And
Okay.
after that came a very brief moment of anger towards her when I
Mhm.
saw that the teddy bear was I saw the teddy bear as a consolation prize from a woman that didn't love me enough to keep me. And I never had that thought before I was 40. Never, never had that thought. And 8 years later, I think, maybe 8 years later, 7 years later, I got my adoption file, and in there was a letter from my birth mother to the social worker, thanking her for her help on Friday. So that was the Friday that Pat had picked me up from Blackpool, from the short-term foster care woman, driven me to Liverpool, where my mum and dad had come across, and that's when I was placed, as they say. So she thanks the social worker for the help on the Friday, and then she says that she'd wanted to get a little thing, something for David, i.e. me, because that's what she called me, David Anthony Flower. She wanted to get something for me on the way to the adoption council agency, but she couldn't do so because the traffic was bad. And would my parents accept a teddy bear for me from her?
Oh, yeah.
And as the tears ran down my face, I realized that 20 seconds of anger and 40 seconds, 40 seconds of fear of her rejecting me, which had
Mhm.
happened in another incident. I saw that was all wrong, and the teddy bear was not a consolation prize or an effing consolation prize. It was a symbol of her love for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna maybe go where many wouldn't dare to go. Being able to connect with that, um, the bear, the symbol of love, for you, did that shift any of your feelings around being abandoned
Well, I didn't feel
or
abandoned, but
perceptions of abandonment?
I felt unloved by her, and I felt unlovable in some regards. I had glimpses of the diamond on the back of work that I'd done between the ages of 40 and the ages of 48 or whatever it is when I found out.
Yeah.
When I got this letter, I had glimpses of it, but it kind of solidified my self-esteem, made it a bit, made my grounding stronger,
Yeah.
stronger foundations. And it also, the deeper part of what happened for me, as the tears ran down my face, is that I felt connected to her. I felt one with her. There was no separation between me and her. The trauma had kept us apart in my head.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
went, and I was connected with her. And now I see it as me being connected with everybody. So we talk about this idea that we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're one spiritual being having whatever it is, 8 billion
A human experience. Yeah.
right? So it's about a felt sense of oneness, and I have felt that since, in rugby stadiums, listening to the national anthems, in rock concerts, listening to Mr. Brightside by the Killers, in with the somatic experiencing woman, talking with you, talking with other fellow adoptees, especially towards the end of some conversations, we kind of drop into that space of oneness. You know, you're 9 inches away from your picture of me. You're sorry, the picture of you on the screen is 9 inches away from me, and you're 3,000 miles away from me, and yet we're one. We're in a sort of we're in the healing space of home. That's home. That's the metaphor. That's what I think home is. It's that place that's a space, that's a connection, that's love, that's energy, that's vibration, that's 500 on the David Hawkins scale of human consciousness from 0 to 1,000 or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah. And I agree. So for me, the finding home is both, and it's finding home itself. I think that's and I don't know which comes first, and maybe it doesn't matter which comes first. For me, the knowing of the oneness came first before finding home within myself in my journey. And so in the home, the I put the Om symbol to represent that state of being, that oneness that we all are, and where we come from. Yeah,
That's
that
what
frequency.
That's what you talked about with Eben Alexander last week when you interviewed him.
Yeah. So I think you and we have found that we've come to similar conclusions in our journeys around the oneness that we all are. And it's beautiful when we have those moments of touching it and experiencing it. What do you think stops us from, and I'm at the us, I'm meaning our adoptee community, from experiencing that and kind of staying in that replay of the trauma narrative?
What stops us seeing home and our diamondness? Trauma.
Yes.
Human conditioning.
Human conditioning. Yeah, trauma. You recently said that trauma is the wall, right, that keeps us from connecting. And you just described that in your story with your biomol, right? And that kind of crumbled away and fell away, and you were able to, through that and since that time, feel the connectedness of your mom and all things, right? Uh, and I know your work, my work is around supporting adoptees in seeing beyond the narrative, right? And hopefully making these connections and move toward wholeness. Uh, what do you think is stopping us from seeing, right? Because these stories, at least for me, I came out of the fog in 2019. These stories were on repeat right until I was like 50.
So what stops us seeing our diamonds
From yeah, from seeing our diamond, like, or from
of
getting
oneness?
beyond the narrative, right? Like, what's stopping us? What do you think? You have interviewed how many adoptees?
I would, well, I've interviewed 470 people, I think. So
Yeah.
there's, in the early days, there were quite a few adoptive parents. Now it's all adoptees. I don't know. And I've spoken to, I've done, yeah, I've spoken to pretty much everybody twice, right? I do it. So,
Well, so
so
I guess my question,
what
like,
stops me?
yeah,
Uh,
so in interviewing them, right, in interviewing us, I don't want to us them, and in interviewing us in all these interviews, has there been some common threads? I know in my work, I have seen some guidepost moments, some really key moments that seem to be part of the map toward wholeness. How, like, but if you could name something from all the research that you've done through these interviews that is hindering, is there something that stands out? I guess is what I'm asking.
um, yeah, we identify with something else. We don't identify with the diamond. So we might identify with our trauma. We might identify by what happened to us, right? We were adopted. We might identify by, I don't know, what do other people like? I'd say it's the trauma bound identity, to use your word,
Yeah.
the trauma bound, believing that we are
Trauma. Yeah,
trauma
we get
bound identity.
bound up in it. Yeah. In that identifying with our trauma.
Yeah. And what, so I think what so the biggest thing that I saw last week, not last week, the biggest thing that I saw last year, I think, was that we can look at healing on two levels.
Hmm.
So first level, psychology, right? So I believe that pretty much everybody that comes on the show that I ask about healing, what they say, healing is a process, healing is a
Hmm.
verb, and it will be happening forever. And I believe that psychological healing, I believe that they're correct. And I also believe that most of the time they're talking about psychological healing. So they're looking at healing from a psychological perspective rather than an essential perspective. So our essence, our
Hmm.
wholeness, our spirit, our consciousness, our diamond. So I would say that, Nancy said this quite a lot at the moment. Nancy Verrier describes the primal wound and says it's psychological, it's spiritual, it's all these different things. And then she wrote a follow-up book about coming home to self, which seems to be, from my recollection, wholly psychological. So she's got a narrow, and that's what I think that's what we pick up on. That's that's the narrative that
Yeah.
trauma is a psychological thing, and it is a psychological thing, and it but we are not our psychology.
Yeah.
We are not our psychology. So what's happening is that we're identifying with our psychology, we're identifying with our trauma, we're identifying with a gazillion things, right? We are not identifying with our essence,
With the truth.
with the truth, with the diamond, with the
Yeah.
consciousness, with the awareness, with the spirit.
Right. Yeah. And too, like, thankfully in the last decade, there has been much more understanding around trauma and trauma research. And so we are starting to see beyond just psychology, right? Like there is somatics and EMDR and EFT. And
Yes.
I leaned heavily into EFT. I was doing somatics as a massage therapist. And so those uh, other modalities have been very supportive in me getting to a place where I can say I'm whole, right? And I'm moving differently in the world and in my life because of that. Um, so I'm really thankful for the growths that are out there, the growth in understanding and what is available to us as far as support in our resolving
Yeah.
the trauma
So
story, right? Like moving beyond it.
So I'm speaking to a lot of people about internal family systems, right, at the
Mhm.
moment. So Kathy McKechnie, who's been on the show, she's an IFS, she's an adoptee, she's an IFS practitioner. The lady that Trish Deutsch interviewed her yesterday, she's an adoptee. She was introduced to me by another adoptee who's an IFS therapist whose name escapes me at the moment, suggested that Trish gets in touch with him. Essentially, IFS, for me,
Mhm.
it brings together the uppercase S self,
Uh-huh.
spirit stuff with the psychology of our parts.
Yes.
So that's been around for 30 years now. IFS has been around for 30 years. But people don't, it's not, people don't know about it. It's still, it's still,
Yeah.
it's still emerging, but it is a methodology that brings in spirit and psychology,
Hmm.
spirit, non-religious spiritual stuff and psychology, and that's a game changer. That's the game
Hmm.
for me.
And yeah, and I found I was doing parts work naturally without knowing what parts work was for a long time. I think you were too, for knowing it. And I want to swing back toward something that I hear often within the community when I'm facilitating or hosting groups is that thought that like we will never get to the other side. Like we're never going to heal. This is an ongoing forever process. And I guess I would just like to offer that I think we can get to a place where it's resolved and we are very much identifying with our capital S self and wholeness, the diamond, and we will continue to grow and evolve.
The
Right.
uppercase,
That's the way of nature is to continue to grow and evolve,
yes,
expand. Right. Yeah. I think within the trauma narrative and story, we can get to a place where it is resolved and
yes.
we're really identifying with our true
Well,
nature.
I mean, we're shifting, aren't we? Like you and
Yes.
me, we're check. Some people don't like the healing word, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially people that have had stuff come out of religious experiences to them. Spoke to
Mhm.
um,
Or they've done a lot of work and it's like, they don't feel like they've gotten very far, or right, like it's like, oh, this is just a forever job, right? Like I think, yeah, it's like, because healing, if it's a physical wound, it does heal. You may have a scar, right? Like you might not be fully the same as you were prior, but there's an end to the process, physically speaking, right? And so I think that's why people don't like healing in terms of this internal work.
Yeah. The uppercase S self is not hurt, harmed,
No.
damaged, wounded, touched, changed. Nothing touches it. Nothing touches it. It is who we are, is untouchable. Not the film, The Untouchables, right?
Yes.
Untouched, unwounded,
Yeah, right.
unwoundable.
And just know that we're going to live a life of growth and transformation. Like that's part of the way all of nature, right? All of nature is growing and transforming, continuously unfolding. So that's part of living and existing, right? Like, so that's going to continue, but we can resolve this narrative and move beyond it.
Yeah. One of the key steps for me after coming out of the fog 17 years ago, I'd say there's two big fog lift moments for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two big coming out of the fog moments for me. But the first one, when was the anger towards my birth mother, a, a while after that, probably 6 months or a year or so after that, I spent a week with 8 people, with in two facilities and 6 of us on the course, and we spent the week basically sharing our stories and then disidentifying from our stories, disidentifying from our internal narrative, seeing that the internal narrator, the voice in our head, is a liar, that sort of stuff. But I summed it up there in 10 seconds, maybe. We spent 5 days on it, from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. So we went really deep on this, and there was a mass. It seems to be part of the process, separating who we are from our story, and that's that's
Huge.
that's huge.
Okay. Thank you for that. And it is, it's huge. And I think in my experience, once that shift happened, big change, it's just been big and constant, um, continued change in,
There was 2
yeah,
processes though that went on, right? We shared
yeah,
our story and we separated from our story, right?
yes. It's important to share it.
If you just share your story, that's great, because we've been locked
Mhm.
away, we've been
Yeah,
lonely. We go into company, we share our story, right? That's brilliant. Okay, and
yeah,
what really worked for me and worked for other people is separating who we are from the story.
yeah.
So you gotta gotta.
Yeah. Thank you for the clarity on those two parts. And they're both really important, because in the sharing the story, I think our infant who couldn't speak needs a voice. Like it does need to be expressed and released from within us. And I think that's why support groups within our community are an important step for a season, because there's validation and affirmation of the experience, which I think we really needed. And for me, that's part of the healing. And yet you also need somebody that's able to hold you in your wholeness, and see you there and affirm that and validate that as well to kind of help you transition. Like it's really important to be
And
seen in your wholeness.
you need somebody to listen to your story and then point out in a way that you see that you are not your story.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's not what they say to us, it's what we hear. It's not what they point at, it's what we see. It's
Mhm.
its insights are an inside job.
Yeah. Yeah. What, I guess, what caused you or what drove you to begin doing the podcast, Thriving Adoptees?
I enjoyed guesting on it, and a mentor told me it was time to start my own.
Okay.
And I said no. And she said yes. And I said no. And she had recommended a podcast trainer, and
Mhm.
I'd spent like a couple £100 with him and gone on his podcast course, and he'd made podcasting sound like it was too much thrash and too much effort. So when she said to me, and she'd introduced me, this mentor had introduced me to
Yeah.
the podcast trainer, and I said, well, you told me that you recommended the guy, the podcast trainer. He
Mhm.
made it sound really difficult, and so I can't do it. She says, no, it's really simple. It's really simple. Um, simple, Simon. Right? You need Simplecast. In terms of technology, you need Simplecast, which is what we're using, $18 a month or something like that. And
Um,
you need Canva,
yeah.
right, to create your little graphics. You've probably got a Facebook account already. And obviously you need guests, right? So
Yeah.
those three things. On Zoom, sorry, Zoom.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And here you are.
And here we are.
What, you know, in all of these interviews, like if there was one wisdom gem that you like, or maybe a really powerful aha moment that you would want to share and say, this, you know,
The voice in your head that says that you can't heal is a liar.
voice in your head that says you cannot heal is a liar. There you go. That's a truth bomb right there. Ooh, I like it. Um, okay, so where are you at now with, because now you're starting to branch into other things. Where are you at now with that drive, to help adoptees? Like, what are you wanting to see in the community? What are you hoping to see in the community?
More leaders,
More leaders,
more healing,
more healing.
more advocacy, more. Somebody, Beth Siverson, who came on. I know it was it. Yeah, she came on the panel. She said that I was a cohesive force in
Yeah.
adoptee space or something like that. And I thought, I quite like that. Yeah, I'd like to see more cohesion, because I'd like to see more cohesion. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Most definitely. You are a cohesive force, and I would love to see more of that as well. We've had enough of, I think, being separate in life and to find that and to be able to offer that to our community, like um, really if we want to advance any change in advocacy, in laws, and in our own personal healing, it's going to take that.
Yeah. So, fellow podcast host Damon Davis, who also came on the panel on with Beth on Wednesday, he called me out on this advocacy stuff. And so I was saying, what's the point? What's the point of trying to talk to people outside of the adoption community? And he had I can't remember exactly what he said, but I realized that my belief was off on this. My perspective was off. I'm quite chuffed to be able to say that now, because I was just thinking the last 10 minutes was a bit self-indulgent. So I'm putting my hand up for making mistakes. So that's why I started doing the advocacy panels, like bringing together. So what can I do, right? What can I do? I've got some reach, more than some, less than others. I've got. So what can I do? I thought, right, well, I'll do the advocacy panels, and I'll bring in people, and I'll interview them. Well, I won't interview them. I'll ask the people coming to the advocacy events the questions that they would like to ask the panel. And I thought, well, that was the idea that came off the back of me seeing that not doing the advocacy stuff was an error on my part.
Yeah. Would you say that this is a labor of love for you? Like this is a passion project?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that it is, but like just the fact, like, and I get emotional, so I'm gonna go with it, but just the fact that you would publicly admit you were wrong, and I know you behind the scenes a bit, and I know that you are so willing to pivot and to hear other people's ideas because there's something very genuine driving you to do what you're doing right now. So thank you. I'm saying thank you for all that.
Thank you. You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Okay, I have to pause a second.
So I talked about the the two levels, and I want to credit. I can't remember her surname. Teresa came on the show. So I was thinking last year I was talking about psychology and essence, right? Two levels of healing. But talking to Teresa, I can't remember her surname. She just said we were talking about healing and stuff. She said, no, there's 5, right? So there's psychology, emotions, biology, relational, and spiritual. So we're looking at five areas of healing, or 5 areas of growth.
Yes.
5 areas.
I call spiritual energetic. I'm just gonna
Okay, yeah. So spiritual and energetic kind of go together. You can do biological in terms of biology, somatics.
Yes.
And I guess you could probably do physiology. Could you do that maybe? And you
could
do physical. So what I think has happened is that we've got kind of we've taken this view that growth or healing, whichever you prefer, is about psychology, and we've not integrated all 5 areas, and that's the thing. So that's why I'm doing the somatic work, right? And that's why I'm but on the more like the emotional side, I'm doing some work with Pam Karanova. She's created a grief recovery method, so I'm exploring that myself. And the wrongness thing that you just said about being willing to be wrong, that's an even better one-liner, I think, about what would I so when I read the letter from my birth mother, I realized that I was wrong. My view was incorrect. my belief wasn't true. And that, I think, has probably kind of turned up my humility and openness. So the podcast that I released today with the interview with Trish Deutsch, it's called Curious and Willing, right? So which obviously I kind of
Curious and
with
willing.
open.
I saw that.
Yeah, curious and willing, right? Rather than set in our ways. So what do we see? What do we see? We see what stops us healing, like being entrenched in our beliefs.
Yeah, fighting for our story.
Fighting for our story.
Yeah.
I had a big moment a couple of months ago when I realized how much reading all these posts fighting, how they landed on me in a moment, and it felt really heavy on my shoulders. And we are unwittingly, unintentionally, unknowingly re-traumatizing ourselves.
Yes, we are. And we're living in the past, right? That moment happened for me in 1968, for you in 1967. And we have that, it's wired in our body, right? And it's on replay. And so every time I allow that to replay, I'm actually living in the past. I'm not in the moment, and my perceptions are not going to be clear. I have trauma glasses on. I'm seeing through the lens of this very old event. Yeah. And so I think the willingness to be wrong.
What was that thing that you saw, that thing that I put yesterday about empowerment and like empowerment is time to change our view of a past event. We can choose a different way of looking at a past event, or we can't.
Right? Yeah.
And we'll stay stuck.
Well, and
or degrees of. Degrees of. I wanted to. That's okay. Interesting. I was listening to a podcast this morning, and it was a shrinky, positive psychology, sports kind of psychology, and it struck me, and it struck me how much black and white there was. This is the right way. That is the wrong way. And I just fell into I did the same thing myself then, right? So it's degrees of.
Yeah.
It's not saying, well, am I open or am I closed? No, it's degrees of openness. It's not, oh, no, I'm closed. Oh yeah, no, I'm open. I'm definitely open. It's not a yes or a no. It's not a black or a white. It's not a 0 or a 1. It's degrees of, and to make it
and sometimes
yes or no is fatuous.
I think sometimes it's both and I'll share what I mean by that. So I've come to a place where I am really identified with my wholeness. And, and I like to say that, I also grew up believing and living in this other narrative, right? That was my reality. That is what I experienced. So I can come to my wholeness. I can now say that my mother's intention was not to abandon me. The meaning I gave it was abandonment, rejection. I was unlovely, all these things, because we're the meaning makers and the writers of our story. And our stories are based on this infant's experience. It had no context. Like we couldn't put that into context. the things that happened to me in my home as a child are from a child's narrow perspective, right? And then you become an adult and a parent and you begin to see it different, right? So it just it's both. I carry both of these within me, both of these stories, right? But one's resolved now, and I'm at peace, and my infant's at peace. It doesn't change that that was the truth that I grew up with, and it was really painful. It was,
Yeah.
and now I'm here.
And we can be whole and still have bad days.
Yes, we can.
We can be whole and still be triggered.
Yes, we can.
And we are.
The difference will be is that you will begin to change how you respond when your nervous system is activated. You'll begin to have better self-care in place for when you're dysregulated, and it will become more and more diminished over time.
And it has. And it
And
will.
it has. And it
Yeah.
has. And I'm amazed at what's shifting, like within my relationships or my relationship mainly with myself, right? Because now doing this inner journey and connecting to my whole self, right? With my diamond, it's changed my relationship with myself. And I've built a rapport of trust with myself that's caused me to have more confidence that I've got my own back, right? I'm not abandoning myself anymore. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a long journey home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you just need to click your heels.
I know the power was within me all along. So, and it's within you and you, all the people listening. It's there.
We're talking about the Wizard of Oz, listeners.
Yeah. It's a Wizard of Oz reference.
And this is Jude, right? And she had a different name, right? Similar name
Yes.
to the same name as the star of.
Hmm. Yeah, Judy Garland. Yeah, Judy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was, part of me finding home too.
That was one of the weird little moments for me, the name thing, right? So we talk about identity, and okay,
Yeah.
we're saying
Tell me.
identity diamond, okay, identity spirit, that's it. Like
Yeah.
that is that's the identity problem solved.
Solved.
Uh, So
Yet I think people have to have an experiential moment with
yes, they
that,
do. Yeah.
you know. But I was going to tell you earlier, and I held back because I didn't want to seem um like callous. But I was going to say that you lucked out with the name because David Anthony Flowers would make you daft,
Yeah.
which would only be funny to a Brit, right? Like,
Daft, yeah, daft, right? So yeah, there's the identity thing. When I got that piece of paper, so I was expecting to get a piece of paper with my birth mother's name on it, and
yeah,
it also had my first name on it, David Anthony Flower, and I thought, that's weird. I've had two names,
yeah,
and then I heard something later that year or later that month, whatever it was. Who we are never changes, right? Who we are, it's the truth is always the truth, right? So anything that changes, like our mood, right,
hmm,
isn't us. Like our
yeah,
name. So am I? Yeah, well, I was David Anthony Flan. When did I become Simon John? Like well, which one's right? And then we disappear down the trauma and perturbation, is it? We travel down the
hmm,
question. We go down the slippery slope where we're questioning more, and we want answers, and then we get frustrated because we haven't got answers.
yeah,
And the identity problems is clear. It's okay. we're the diamond, we're the consciousness, we're the spirit, we're the wholeness, that's what's good about the uppercase S self. Actually, the uppercase S self of IFS makes it not woo woo, nothing to do with Simon and his silly metaphors, or like, that's it. Uppercase S self. That's who we are. Not our ego, not our trauma. Our uppercase S self. Who we truly are.
Yeah. Most definitely. And I think
and all those people getting confused about identity, and all that time we spent getting confused about identity, and it was so simple.
That's why the power is with you all along, my dear. The something that you hit on just now, and I think sometimes people stumble around, is we're not our thoughts, we're not our feelings, we're not even these physical bodies. These are our homes while we are here on this planet living this experience right now. And that self, that diamond piece, is our true identity. And we are sensory beings, so we are discerning this reality through our body, through our emotions. And so having that understanding of separation, that they're not actually who we are, that's our kind of messaging system. That's information that's coming through for us to filter and discern. And we filter it based on, as Dr. Paul Sunderland says, experience is the architect of the brain. And so our first experience is what we're filtering all of life through. And yet that's a faulty experience to build life upon.
Yes, and that's trauma education. What we're doing is growth education and healing education, isn't it?
Yeah.
And everybody loves that Paul Sunderland video. I was like, no, I don't get it. If you want to, if the listeners, if Jude and I aren't making this clear, just do one thing. Buy No Bad Parts by Dick Schwartz, and that book will make it clear. Or Google him or search for him on a podcast and listen to him if you don't want to invest in the $10 or whatever it is before you that guy can point very accurately, I think.
Okay.
So,
I don't know when we started.
So I think we're about there.
All right. So I'm going to sum up your takeaway messages, and it would be willing to be wrong, and know that you are a diamond and not the trauma-bound narrative.
Indeed.
Indeed.
Do you want to thank the listeners? Do you want me to do that?
You can do it. Or I guess I should do it, since you're the interviewee. Thank you, Simon, first,
thank you, Jude.
for just availing yourself to let me, the novice, interview you. And trust me, I have felt quite the novice doing these, but it's been a real honor and a joy. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in and hearing this interview with Simon and myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jude. And your noviceness has not shown at all.
And remember, you're a diamond.
Yeah, remember you're a diamond. Did you have Wombles in the US?
We have what?
There was a kids program in the UK, and they were called the Wombles. There were the Wombles of Wimbledon Common.
No.
And one of their big hits was "Remember You're a Womble." So if you're feeling in a 70s mood, then put that into YouTube. Remember You're a Womble. But instead of the word Womble, insert the word diamond. Okay. Speak
All
to you
right,
soon.
thanks everybody. Yeah.
Bye.